It's 2025 and I am going to overhaul my reviewing and rating process when it comes to reading both fiction and nonfiction. I'm finding that it is necessary for me to have my own rating and review system, and in December I sat down and kind of figured out what that was and categorized what I look for in a good book, or what I think is important in a book. So I wanted to share that with you because I think it will be useful. I did share it on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. That's a very shortened version of it. I think I can go into more depth here. It is consistent across all the books I read. It's consistent with nonfiction and fiction alike, although there's a little variation for each type of book, and I'll go into that later. I honestly haven't used the popular system that is kind of, I don't know, I think it has 7 or 9 categories to kind of rate and or score and then add up. And that just, when I looked at that, when I was kind of researching what I should do with my own reviewing and rating, that just seemed over the top to me personally. It's nuanced enough that I think that anybody can take it and make it their own so that they can also have a very consistent rating system across their own reading. Now, reading is super subjective. I despise factual language when describing your personal subjective experience and relationship reading a book or a series of books. It breaks my heart to be like floating around on the internet and see people talk about something being good or bad based on their own subjective thoughts and experiences and emotions that came up when reading or watching or whatever. And I feel like how you feel about something doesn't hold any merit on whether it's good or bad. It just is, right? You may not like it, you may love it, but that doesn't mean that somebody else has to like or love it, or, we need to shame people for liking or loving something. I just feel like there's a lot of that, and my review system tries to avoid that very factual language about something that's super subjective. Like, it's never going to be objective, except nonfiction. We can get into that, of course. Like, nonfiction is a little different because if it's just like total misinformation and totally wrong information, I understand that, and that kind of factual review needs to be out there, right? I'm talking strictly fiction when I say all of that. Hopefully this is helpful for anybody watching. Let me know in the comments and let's get started. So my review system is a simple acronym with 5 letters, and it spells witch, W-I-T-C-H. And it stands for writing style, intrigue, themes or thesis and theories, characters or concepts, and hedonism. Now I'm going to break that down a little bit because it's probably a little confusing at this point, or maybe it's not. Writing style, did I like the way it was written? And for me, I personally like when I read for the prose to be elegant and lush and poetic. I want to feel something. I want to be like, ooh, that's beautiful. I don't need every single sentence to be quotable, right? I just want to be engaged in the beauty of the writing. Was it imaginative? Was it poetic? Was it atmospheric? Trance-like? Did I find it boring, tedious, ponderous? Did I like the perspective? I don't mind first person. I don't mind third person. I don't like second person. A good example of this is I read Lucy and Dying lately, and there are chapters where it flips to a character and they're talking, you go outside, you go into the kitchen, you do this, you do that. And I just don't like it. But that might be for somebody else, you know, it's like someone else might love that perspective. But just knowing those things about yourself, knowing what you like, knowing what you dislike, helps you review the book from a you perspective, right? Another thing with perspective could be like, are there too many characters? Are you jumping from too many characters' perspectives throughout the book? Do you like that or do you not like that? You know, I can go 6 one, half dozen of the other. It really just depends on a lot of the other things going on with the writing style. I like atmospheric, I like trance-like, I love fever dreamish books, like Bunny, for example, super fever-ish, dreamish, fever dreamish. And it's, also Annihilation. I thought that was very trance-like and it just pulls you in with that style of writing. Some people don't enjoy that at all. It feels too dreamy and sometimes you just want like logical writing. That's perfectly fine too. Moving on to Intrigue. Now this is a big category. This one can cover plot, setting, like was the plot and setting intriguing? Again, back to like atmospheric things with the setting. The plot depends what you enjoy in a plot, really. I don't go, scanning through a book for plot holes. I don't go, I will notice really obvious ones, but I'm not, waiting for plot holes. I'm not digging up for plot holes. That's not how I review books. I will get to other parts of this review system that kind of have kept me away from that style of reviewing because I'm not looking for what's wrong with the book. I can see things that are wrong with it as I go. They kind of, are in my face at a certain point. But ultimately, if the plot is moving and it's keeping me engaged and I'm not like, I don't know, this is difficult because I'm a person that doesn't mind kind of what the fuck is happening plots, but some people do not like that. And so you have to decide for yourself what about a plot is most important. Do you want to be kind of in this juxtaposition as you're going through the book and then it all comes together at the end? Do you want your plot to be kind of straight through? Do you like it to be like a hero's journey, like circle, where it's kind of following a path? And yes, like uncertainty is happening, but it's kind of following a trajectory. Do you like the beats in certain genres and you need your novels to stick to those beats? That's kind of how I view the plot. And so Intrigue covers plot, it covers setting, it covers the general premise. Did you find it super engaging? Did you stay up all night reading it or want to stay up all night reading it? Was it something that you got through quickly because you were obsessed with it and couldn't put it down? Was it something that it took forever because you hated it? Or did it take forever because you were savoring it? I've had a few books like that where I just love them so much. I just drag them out for weeks and weeks and weeks because I didn't want them to end. But I've had other books that it dragged on and on and on, like me reading it because I wasn't enjoying it. Yeah, things to consider with that. And now for nonfiction, intrigue is, there's not usually a plot in a nonfiction or even really a setting. Some nonfiction might have those elements, but for nonfiction, does the premise intrigue you? Is the book keeping you engaged? It's pretty simple. It's pretty cut and dry. Same with writing style. Are you able to get through this nonfiction book with how it's written and how intriguing it is? Now for the T, it's themes or thesis and theories. So for fiction, are you enjoying the themes in this novel? Can you pick out the overarching theme or themes? Do you like them? Are they landing well? Are you connecting with them well? Do you feel like they're not done very well, or they're just too like bloated and not really like sticking to the point of the story and the plot and the setting? Is it just are the themes pulling you out of the book, or are they really like pulling you in? Do you relate to the themes? Is the author conveying the themes well with the writing style and the intrigue of their plot and setting? So as you can see at this point, these points weave together really well, and they kind of play off of each other. Now for nonfiction, like thesis and theories, what it kind of is like, what is the general nonfiction theme of this book? What is this author or professional or expert trying to tell you in this book? And if it isn't clear pretty much immediately, that's probably not a good thesis, right? If you're sitting there struggling for like the first half of the book, like what are they trying to tell me? What are they trying to convince me? What are they trying to say with all of this? Chances are they don't have a sound thesis. Do you connect with the thesis? Are you also an expert in said field? Do you agree with them? So, that nonfiction is a little different than fiction, like I have said before, because you may be reading it because you are an expert in that subject and everything's completely off. And so you're going to know that as an expert, whereas the next person who isn't an expert in that field is just picking this book up because it has been like fed to them on social media, and that's not as subjective, right? Like it's a little more objective. For those of us that have gone maybe to college or remember in high school like writing your thesis of your paper, maybe that doesn't matter to you at all when you're reading a nonfiction, but I can assure you, if you don't feel connected to the overall, let's just call it a theme of that nonfiction, you probably aren't going to enjoy that book. It probably isn't going to connect to you. It's probably not going to change your life. You're not going to learn anything. You might learn some tidbits, some fun facts, but you most likely are going to walk away from that book and not remember it, not be able to discuss it in a very like thorough way or a very like connected way. The C in which stands for characters or concepts for nonfiction. So with the characters, did I like them? Did I love to hate them? Did I hate them, but that's okay because that's the point of the book? Did the characters change and grow? Did I agree or disagree with the characters and their decision? A big one that's been coming up for me is, do I like how the author has designed these characters, especially in like fantasy or sci-fi? If they have designed some level of psychology or some level of anatomy, I don't know a good example of what I'm trying to say. Like, I just read Vicious, and the author, I do love this author in a lot of ways, and that book was pretty entertaining, but I had a hard time with how she designed how people, these characters come back from a near-death experience with a lack of empathy. I don't think every character in that book had that, but it seemed to be a prominent theme, and I was kind of turned off by that. I don't think that's true, but I'm not a psychologist. Maybe it is true. If I'm not digging the characters, if I'm not digging how the author wrote those characters, I'm probably not going to rate this category very high. Now, if I dislike the characters, if I hate the characters, that doesn't always mean that I'm going to rate this category low, because sometimes that's the point of the book, is that you hate these characters. The Secret History is a good example of this. Every character pretty much sucks. They're all assholes. I didn't like any of them as people. I would never hang out with anyone like those people. But I feel like that was, in my opinion, the point of the novel, is that they made really unsound, unsavory choices. They did things that were unethical and not right, and justified all of it with their, their little club. I'm trying not to spoil anything. I'm just giving little examples of my personal interpretation of some of these books, but yeah, that's just a kind of a great example of a book where pretty much everyone who reads that hates all the characters, and sometimes it's a deal breaker. But for me, I thought it made the novel really interesting to have a cast of characters that all sucked, and yet the book was really, really well written. I think it took me 24 hours to read this book. I listened to the audiobook, and I was actually pretty engaged in the entire time, even the times when I was like, oh my god. So, yeah. Another thing with characters, did I identify with them? Because sometimes that can make you really, really love the character if they're really connected with you. I don't know what it is about the Fourth Wing series. I cringe so hard in those books, but there's a few characters, the main character is someone with an invisible illness disability, and I also have an invisible illness disability, and she's a total badass. Sometimes she makes me cringe, but she's a total badass. And I just love that. And, there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with reading something that makes you cringe and laugh out loud because of just oh my god, this is so bad. There's nothing wrong with also loving it, right? You need your guilty pleasures and your brain candy. So that's a good example of a book that I wouldn't say I hate it, but yeah, it's definitely not they're not, I don't know. I could get into it. I should do a review on those, but yeah, just an example of connecting with a character that's probably a big reason why I continue to read that series when I'm also talking shit with some of my friends about that series, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, right? Now, nonfiction concepts, it's kind of each chapter usually has it breaks down some portion of their thesis or introduces concepts that support their argument that they're making or the thesis that they're bringing up in this book. So that's pretty basic. Usually each chapter has the concept in the heading, and that might even be broken down into smaller bite-sized concepts throughout the chapters. So yeah, concepts is pretty simple. if you have more questions on what I mean by that, feel free to engage in the comments. Now, the last category is the best category. It's the most important category to me because I read for pleasure. I read for enjoyment. I was in college for a while with a really heavy reading and writing degree, and I'm so over reading for like that purpose, like writing papers or taking a test. Like that, I don't want to do that anymore. So I read mostly for enjoyment. I'm sure there's gonna be the occasional time that I read a book because I am doing research that's actually important. But right now I'm not doing that. I don't care about that. So the last category, the H, is hedonism. So back to kind of the fourth wing thing, I just enjoy it. I like it. Am I gonna go around telling everyone it's my favorite book? No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm more likely to... No, I don't even talk shit. Like, let's be real. When like somebody is loving on that, I'm like, that's great. I'm glad you love on that. Like, everybody has their thing. It's very overhyped, right? But that's part of the appeal, is like community. I love that's part of hedonism too, is like, are you finding your people when you read that book? It also goes back to like, how fast did I get through the book? Was it a savory book? Was it a couldn't put it down book? Did I hate it? Was I not enjoying it? I need to get better about, if I don't like something, a book, I put it down. Like, I don't need to finish it if I'm not enjoying it. Maybe I could do it later. Part of hedonism too sometimes comes later, right? It's like, sometimes I read a book and it's good and I like it, but it's the thinking about it later. It's the living rent free in my head later. It's like a year, 2, 3 years later, being still like, oh my god, that book just, I can't stop thinking about it, you know? So some of those things, I think pleasure reading is super important right now. I think there's a lot of stuff online pushing that, you know, even like, and I'm getting into nonfiction now. Like, it has to have a purpose, that it has to be something that's going to change your life. It has to be something you implement into your life. I'm a witch, so with witchcraft, I feel like there's a ton of witchy books out there that get some shit because they, I don't know, they're not serving like the purposes of the, like what the reader expected out of them. But it's like, you can go anywhere online and find what it's about, and I don't know. Even with nonfiction, you kind of have to enjoy it. If the nonfiction is serving a purpose, like research, or you're building your practice, or you're trying to make a change in your life, then like, why are you not enjoying it? And, you know, maybe with the research aspect, you could set hedonism aside a little bit, but a lot of us do research on the side and not in school, or like in a environment that like is requiring this research. A lot of us do our research because we enjoy that topic, right? Would you recommend this to other people? Would you not? And I'm not talking you're too embarrassed to recommend it to other people or to tell other people that you like it. I mean, would you recommend it to someone with similar tastes to you? Yeah, I don't really like put ratings online. I put the star rating on Goodreads and Fable, but I don't get into depth in like the comment part. So I like to start doing that more, and I think this is gonna help me make that happen and make it all make sense to me. Reviewing in a way that's like systematic, I think that really helps, at least for me. Each of these categories get a rating when I'm done, a number between 1 and 5. I'll share the 1 and 5 that I use, but it's pretty standard, you know. I add those up, I divide that number by 25, you're gonna get maybe a strange number. I then divide that number by 5 again. I'll have to double check this. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. I hope that this rating system helps you. If it does, please let me know in the comments. If not, you can let me know in the comments too. Yeah, so bye.